I've never actually done that before.
Yeah, I've never seen that.
Hopefully, hopefully.
It says
You should have
me
just
now
told us it's
streaming live on YouTube. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
I've never actually done that before.
Yeah, I've never seen that.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, let me share this to the History Center's page. We are live on YouTube.
I've never actually done that.
Okay, I think we should be ready, guys. Let me get this going here. Get this off here. And okay, I think we are ready. Um, sorry for the delay. Technology is not your friend when it doesn't want to be. But thank you everybody who is tuning in on YouTube Live. Hopefully, if you're not able to see this tonight, you can watch it later, and we will be sharing a recorded copy on YouTube at a later date as well. But if you don't know who I am the executive director of the Clinton County History Center. My name is Shelby Boatman. And we are super excited to welcome Melvin and Carlotta both to our Zoom tonight, and just really excited to have a discussion with both individuals regarding the step-by-step book and the Lincoln Marching Mothers movement out of Hillsboro, Ohio, which, if you did not know, that is on the border between Highland and Clinton County. And a couple of the Clinton County Quakers actually went over to Highland and Hillsboro to make a difference and really practice their beliefs of peace and pacifism and the right to an education and social justice for all. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our guests. Melvin Barnes is the program officer at Ohio Humanities, and Melvin was born and raised in Toledo and initially joined Ohio Humanities in the summer of 2019 as a research fellow. Before joining the team in 2020, he taught history at the Ohio State University, and completed his doctorate in Chinese and East Asian history, which is pretty amazing. He lives in Clintonville, and we're super excited to welcome you, Melvin. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, no problem. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, and then Dr. Carlotta Penn is the Senior Director of Partnerships and Engagement for the Office of Equity, Diversity, and Global Engagement in the College of Education and Human Ecology at the Ohio State University. She holds a PhD in education and an MA in comparative studies from The Ohio State University, a BA in mass communication from Wright State University, and has spent several years as an English language educator in local and global contexts. Her research interests include Black women educators, language and literacy, and multicultural education. She is also a children's book author and the founder of Daydreamers Press, yay, an independent publishing company based in Columbus that curates books, media, and related programming, especially for children, that explore the legacy of Black storytelling, art, and advocacy. Her works include Dream a Rainbow, The Turtle with an Afro, The Turtle with an Afro, A Star is Born, Bright Boys ABCs, and Race, Justice, and Activism in Literacy Instruction. And I think you can also add this to your list now too.
Yes,
So
hello.
yeah. So without further ado, I'll kind of turn it over to Melvin to share with you all the story of the Lincoln Marching Mothers and kind of how this whole, movement, documenting this movement got started and the importance of continuing that story. So Melvin, go ahead.
Yeah, so this story really tells or talks about the actions of a collection of Black mothers and families who, in the wake of the Brown v. Board decision in 1954, began to organize to make sure that that decision actually meant something on the ground in places like Ohio. These mothers, after separate but equal was struck down, these mothers began to organize to get their children into the white schools in Hillsborough. And the reason why they did this was because there was a fire that was set at the Black school in town, and many of the mothers feared that the structure was no longer safe, despite the efforts by the local school board to repair the building and make it safe. They understood that the building had been damaged. So these mothers began to march at the same time that they brought a legal case against the school board. And every day, every morning, they got their children together and they marched to the school to be denied for almost 2 years. Um, as this case moved up the legal system, it reached the point where the Supreme Court decided not to take up the case, which meant that the lower ruling that the schools must be immediately integrated was put into place. And this is a story that for a long time had kind of been lost to history, even in the state of Ohio. And really, people in Hillsborough didn't even discuss it all that much. But in that moment, what they had achieved was something really important. And it became a sort of an important case that was cited from places as far away as, New York and even as far away as Texas in terms of figuring out, in the wake of Brown v. Board, what that decision meant and how the country was going to move forward integrating its schools.
Absolutely. And do you want to kind of touch or talk about the part one documentary and then the new documentary that was actually just screened at the Murphy Theater? I think it was Monday night. I think it was like the first official screening of the documentary without being on PBS. So if you want to kind of explain like part one and part two of that.
Yeah, I think you all were first. This has been a long process to go from idea to kind of PBS documentary. Initially, in partnership with the Highland County Historical Society, beginning in 2016, they began to produce a documentary with a documentarian named Andrea Torici. This first iteration of the documentary was a bit shorter. We call it version one. That was about 15 minutes, and it was really designed to be something that they could show at the Historical Society. So they produced a exhibit, and that documentary could be shown there. And really, if you wanted to see it, that was the place to go see it. When I came on in 2020, they talked to me about the project. They said, "Hey, Melvin, we've got this project. Do you mind looking at the script and seeing, maybe if we can expand this documentary?" And when I read the script, I said, "Oh yeah, there's a lot more that we could add here to really add valuable context." So the filmmakers who had already shot all of these interviews with one of the mothers who took part in the marches and many of the children kind of went back to work to figure out how can we expand this thing and make it broadcast length for, say, PBS. And that process really began in 2021, 2022. And, it's been about 8 years, but we finally reached that point where we had the sort of broadcast length 26-minute documentary that took a lot of time, energy, and effort, and going back to the drawing board and getting rights to images. We finally got that, and it released this month in the state of Ohio. It's being sort of broadcast by WOSU.
Very cool. It was I had went to the program earlier this week and I've seen part one and I've seen part two, and part two was even more expansive and even more informative, which I loved. I loved hearing, um, just about the additional information and kind of when they went to the court and learning more about that, which was kind of left out, the full details in part one. um Got to meet obviously the daughters and the marchers, and they signed both of the books actually that I have, which I just thought was like such a history moment, to have
I
all
don't
these
even have that.
signatures.
I was gonna say I'm gonna actually go to Hillsborough and get my book signed because I didn't. They were
Yes,
so busy asking me to sign their books. I didn't get them to sign mine. So smart move.
definitely you should do that.
Yeah.
um so we're gonna actually add one to the museum for kind of posterity, so we're excited about that. But I don't know, Melvin, if you know off the top of your head, like when the part two will debut on PBS, and if you don't, that's okay. Just kind of so people in Clinton County can be aware of when to watch for it.
Yeah, so the first time it was shown was on the 6th, I believe. Now there's some weirdness about where you are and when it'll be shown. But I'm fairly certain, and I'm looking at the calendar here, it's going to be shown a couple of times this weekend. Now, if you're in that CETV broadcast area, which is maybe a little closer to Cincinnati, it's going to be a late night showing, so it'll be on at 11 p.m. If you're a night owl, you can stay up to watch that. And then there's going to be another showing that's also a bit late. That is with Think TV Public Broadcast. That is, I think, a little closer to the Dayton area if you're closer to that. Again, that'll be at 11:30, even later. So if you're a night owl, stay up for that. But we'll have another broadcast that's going to be on Sunday, the 18th at 1 p.m. And that one, if you're like me and are not going to be up super late, that might be the one to look out for.
Awesome. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add? Or I know that there is a website if you do want to mention how people can get some more information, because I was looking at that this morning.
Yeah, so we have a website that has a lot of information that you can grab. There's sort of learning materials, all kinds of things that you'll need if you want to sort of learn more about the story. We even have links to newspaper articles from the time if you want to read about it from the actual papers at the time. And all you have to do is just go to lincolnschoolstory.com, and you can find everything that you need there, even the broadcast TV schedule.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much. I'm sure we'll come back to you with a couple questions in a minute, but I'd like to transition to Carlotta. Thank you so much for joining us and taking time out of your valuable schedule to meet with us. But we're so happy to have you here, and I'll kind of like hand it over to you if you just want to take it away.
All right. A couple of years ago, Rebecca Asmo, who is the executive director of the Ohio Humanities, sent me an email and said that she had learned about Daydreamers Press and told me that they had this story that they wanted to amplify called the Lincoln School Marchers. About the Lincoln School Marchers. And Rebecca sent me the link to that version one documentary as a way to introduce me to the story and see if I was interested in learning more and kind of helping Ohio Humanities to think about how they might tell the story to a child audience. She told me in that email that the women who were marchers, who were student marchers at the time, wanted to make sure the story was made available to children and to young people, to the next generation. And that is how my journey with Ohio Humanities and the Lincoln School Marchers began. And I'm just so grateful that I received that email, that I was, blessed with this opportunity to be a part of telling this story. And so I watched the documentary. I had never heard the story before. And I mean, I was intrigued, I was inspired, and I was just like, I felt so lucky to have been brought into the story. And so initially, I worked sort of as a consultant with Ohio Humanities just to think through what they wanted to do and what the possibilities were. And then that following year, we embarked on um, writing the story. And so I called on Debbie Rigaud, who is a children's lit writer who is in Columbus, Ohio, who I met a few years ago. Debbie is not from Ohio, but she's living here now with her family, and she's a great storyteller. And so, as a publisher of Daydreamers Press, I knew that I wanted to be a part of the project, putting the whole story together. But I also still wanted to write on it. But I thought I'd really like somebody else to sort of take the lead on writing, so that I can also focus on, working with the illustrator and the art direction and all these other components of publishing the book. And so Debbie and I started writing together, and we started by reading through the Highland Historical Society's, I'll call it a manual. I mean, it's a book about Black history in Highland County. And that was such an incredible resource for us, just to refer back to over and over and over again as we, through every stage of the writing process and the book production process, even when we began working with the illustrator, just thinking about, just reminding ourselves of all the layers of not just the Lincoln School Marcher story, because that the book, the Highland Historical Society book about Black history, it goes into far more detail than just the Lincoln School Marcher story. But it was just really great to get additional background and context on the history of this place. And so that was a great resource for us. We went online, we would meet at the library and just look at articles from the time, whether it was based in Hillsborough or Cincinnati or Ohio or other places, to really immerse ourselves in the time and the story, and sort of to remind ourselves of the significance of this story. And Debbie and I are both Black mothers with children in school. And so we felt deeply connected to, and Debbie also works in education. So she's a writer. She's also, works in an elementary school classroom. And so we're just so connected around the advocacy of wanting Black children to get an equal education. That's what this story is all about. It's also all about community. And Debbie and I are both really like family community people. And so, so that was our story. Our journey was meeting at the library. Usually that's typically what we would do. We would meet in the main library in Columbus, Ohio. The second floor is the history area. So we would meet back there, and just, maybe there was something about this space also that inspired us. We would get stacks of picture books, and we would get, some historical books, and have that Highland County manual with us. And we talked through what's the best way to tell this story. We knew that we wanted it to be a picture book, right? So we wanted it to speak to younger children, but we knew the story wasn't necessarily the protagonist, who we decided would be Joyce, was sort of an older child. So we were kind of, talking through these tensions about what's the best way to tell this story. In one sense, it's a mother's story. It's a story about motherhood and mothers caring for and loving their children. But we didn't feel like a mother was the best protagonist for the story. And so the way we came up with Joyce as the protagonist is because Joyce Clemens was the, what do you call it, Melvin? The plaintiff in the case, right? It's Clemens versus what? Clemens versus the Hillsborough
school board, or what?
Yeah.
I'd have to look at the exact language.
Yeah. So since she was like that main character, even though as a child she did not go and testify, we felt like it made sense to call on her to tell this story. The second piece was what's the framework for the story. Now here come my kids. We talked about this. They were going to come. Okay, sorry. We thought, what is the best way to sort of frame the story? And one of the things that I haven't mentioned yet is that I did meet with the women from Hillsborough and talk to them about this story. And one of the things that stood out to me was that they said they hadn't told their own children for many, many years about this story. And that's one of the reasons they were so passionate and so committed to making sure this story is told to the next generation. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, even though we came up with this concept of the scrapbook, the memory book, Joyce really didn't have a memory book, but in a way that's what they wanted through this book, is a memory book, a collection of this history for the younger generation. And so that's how the story came to be. And I just want to read the first part of the story, just to kind of highlight where they were coming from. It says, imagine you had to walk 600 miles to get fair treatment at school. When I was 12 years old, I did just that. Together with my friends and our mothers, I marched so that Black children could get an equal education. We had a fire for fairness burning in our hearts. It shed a light on the path we walked toward justice. And boy, did we walk. I want everyone to know our story, so I kept a memory book of our marching days. Take a look. And so again, this idea that our history is important, our memories are important, and that it's so critical that young people and each new generation is aware of where they've come from, so that they don't take things for granted, and so that, as people say, history doesn't repeat itself, even though we see history repeating itself anyways, right? We need to know, how other people have fought through, and that people have made it through, even if things feel like they're going backwards. So I don't know if that shares enough. I'm happy to talk more, but it's a beautiful story. The women of Hillsborough, women and men, are beautiful people, who I think are really proud, that this story is being told. And I'm definitely going to have them sign my book, because, the other thing that Debbie and I talk a lot about is this being the longest sustained civil rights march is so significant to US and to world history, but it's not lifted up like some of the other civil rights marches are. And so in a way, I feel like they can be taken for granted in that sense. They're just from this little town in Ohio, but they did a huge thing for the world. And so, calling them out as the legends and the celebrities that they are in our civil rights and in our national history is really important. And I hope that this story, alongside the documentary, can help to do that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That was exactly what I was hoping for.
Oh, great.
Yeah. One of the questions that came to my head as I was reading it, and when I first heard about the storybook that was going to come out, I know that they did the campaign to kind of fundraise and kickstart this off. How long does it take to make a children's book? That was my question.
It took us a year. And that's from brainstorm to product. I think it was around a year. So that is Debbie and I writing the story and then working with the illustrator to put the illustrations together. Sorry about that.
You're fine.
About a year.
Yeah, that kudos to you guys. 1 year seems like no time at all.
Yeah, I mean it goes fast, that's for sure. And we really felt compelled to be really focused and intentional around getting it done, because we knew the women are really anxious themselves and wanting to get this story out. So we felt like a sense of urgency, to be committed to getting it done too. I will say that we in the book it says we had a fire for fairness. Well, Debbie and I had a fire in us as well to get this done and really commit to it. And so it was a wonderful process.
Awesome. I don't know, Melvin, this might be a question for you, but I guess with the children's book, was it more of a Ohio Humanities kind of goal to do the children's book to piggyback off of the story, or was it more of a Highland County, Lincoln Marching Mothers, more of the people, they wanted the children's book?
So for us, it was actually a little bit of both. Ohio Humanities, typically we had not operated in a space where we did a lot of programming for children, but we had recently decided that's a place that we needed to pivot into. So this sort of children's book fit really well with that. But the other thing was that in our interviews with Joyce and some of the other marchers, it really sticks out with me, but we were sitting down and Joyce would always say, if we can just reach the children, we can make sure that we can do better tomorrow. So she was always adamant that we had to have something that would be geared towards the children. So it was like these two streams coming together, of us saying, hey, what can we do for kids? And then Joyce saying, you need to do something for kids. So those two things came together and we just had to figure out, okay, well, how can we make that happen? And one of the names that kept coming up was always Carlotta. So our executive director, Rebecca Asmo, went in and, sent that email. And I know it must have felt like a whirlwind year for you guys writing, but I remember sitting there thinking like, oh man, okay, it's been a year. We're waiting on the book. And when it finally came, it was like Christmas. And I remember having the thought of, okay, this is why you get people who know what they're doing to write these books, because I remember being floored with the picture, the memory book idea. I remember thinking I never would have come up with something like that, but it is
Yeah.
such a creative way to tell this story, and it's powerful. And we have a photograph of Joyce reading the book, and it's one of those pictures that, professionally, it's going to stay with you because you did something right on the job. So that's how it came together. It was like they told us we needed to do it, and Carlotta made it happen.
Awesome.
And I'll just say, just to add on to the illustrations, I want to shout out the illustrator Nisha Lilly. This really does, in a way, feel like a memory book. She layered the historical photos and the art so beautifully, and we even some of the things that are drawn in are of course taken from real conversations or real circumstances of the time. And so it is beautiful that it does serve as a memory book, as a historical document, even though, of course, obviously, it's a picture book. There's art in it, but it's such a resource. And I love that it's a resource also for older readers and for adults, because there is so much to find. I mean, there's almost full articles on some of the pages that you can actually read and say, get a magnifying glass maybe, but you can read some of the articles and just be drawn in to discover more. Look up a headline yourself on the internet and say, what is this about? And then at the end of the book, there's also statements from Ohio Humanities and the authors and the illustrators. And so there's a lot to dig into in this book. And I think that's what also makes it just a great resource. Yes, for children, but also for older adults. It's just a work of art, a creative work of historical art to study.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. As a historian, I was blown away by the primary resources that were clippings like in the pages. I was like, I wish I had kids so I could like show them this. Because it's like you don't see children's books with primary resources or like an index, a sourced index in the back. Like you just don't, children's books are like fairy tales and make believe, and to tie in, this idea of like she kept a memory book but not really. It was so fluid. It felt real. And yeah, kudos to you guys. Kudos. Um, I guess Melvin, I had a question about like how the book came to be, because I remember you guys fundraising or doing some type of like campaign. Can you kind of refresh my memory and like comment on that?
So I will say this is the side of the project that I know the least about. That's the the money stuff. I'm like, oh, I can keep me away from that. But I will say that the success of the project was the end result of a lot of generosity. There were people who made donations that is so generous. It's hard to sort of to thank them enough. There are individuals like John Glaze, Katie Burwinkle, who she played a really central role in helping to even keep the story alive.
Mhm.
So there were people in Hillsborough, Highland County more broadly, and just throughout different parts of the state that once they realized that we were working on this project, they opened up their hearts, but they also, opened up their checkbooks and really helped to make it a reality. So we got a lot of generous donations to see this project through.
Mhm. That's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, donations go a long way, and it's a lot of times that things like this are not possible without the donations.
Yeah, it's a community effort, and I think that's part of what makes it so beautiful.
Hmm. Wonderful. Um, I wanted to point out to Carlotta, I don't know if you noticed, there's a page in here. Let me find it. Um, they were talking when I read this Tuesday for the Facebook Live for the Literacy Foundation. I was so struck by the page where it says the fire on that cross was no match for the light in our hearts. And I don't know if you know like Quakerism or kind of like the beliefs of that, but having a light inside of you, like they really believe in that and adhere to the light inside of people, you know, your soul and whatnot. And when I read that, I was like, so many Quaker references in the book. I was really, you know, amazed by. And I just wanted to point out, you know, to say there's no match for the light in our hearts. Like, absolutely.
Oh, that's so great to know that that's another layer. We did talk a lot about the metaphor of light and fire, and like, you know, we thought about how the Lincoln School was set on fire, and we wanted that to be a part of it, but we wanted light and fire to have also a positive connotation. And so Debbie and I talked a lot about that, and of course also the Protestant Christian tradition of, you know, this little light of mine, which is also in there, and just, you know, letting your light shine. And the biblical reference, I know the women of Hillsborough were, church going folks. And so I love that that's another layer of meaning to this, because we did feel like it was important to bring in the Quaker story, because it was a significant part of the story. So we wanted that to be highlighted there. So that's great to know.
Yeah, I thought I would share that. It just really struck me when I had read it the other night. Um, Another burning question that I have is the artwork in the book, was it all done by hand or kind of how did the artwork come to be?
Yeah, so Nisha draws, I guess the technical way to describe it is she draws it by hand, but digitally. So she draws digitally, but by hand. And so, yeah, she drew everything. And we talked a lot about like even the faces. So you can see actually on this page, you can see that there are no faces. There are no features on the faces, I'm sorry. But if you look, for example, at this page, right, you see the people with features in their faces. And so some of those subtle decisions were just around, you know, wanting to really highlight the people who were, when we really want to focus on the story and sort of making it real, that we would put features in. But when we wanted it a little bit more abstract, keeping the features off of the faces. And so she's just a wonderful, thoughtful artist. And yeah, I mean, she's just great at what she does. I loved her style, the subtlety of her art, but also a little bit of portraiture in there. And so, yeah. And the colors, you know, the color scheme, just I think so much of this, just there's a calming sense to the color scheme in it, and the yellow brick road. There's just there's so many ways that I think color came together in the art as well.
Absolutely. Yes, I thought it was beautifully done and the colors just blend so well together.
Um, yeah.
Another question that I have is what was the most exciting part about working on the project? And then I'll have like a part two to that.
For me,
Yes.
um, a couple of things. One was getting to meet with and talk with the women of Hillsborough. Please excuse the chaos unfolding.
Okay.
I really appreciated the times that I went to Hillsborough and met with Joyce and Myra and, you know, all of the other women. They were just so kind and warm and excited. And then Myra and I texted a lot. So she was a resource to me, you know, just if I needed to ask a quick question, or, you know, she's very close with Joyce. And so she would sometimes ask Joyce a question for me. When I was reading this, so one of the things that these children are good for is reading the story through as we were working on it. So they heard many versions of the story. And toward the end, when the book was done and I was reading like a near finished version, my daughter Jimber said, are these people are still alive? And I said, yeah. And she said, did you meet them? And I said, yeah. And she's like, that was so cool. That's so cool. And I thought, yeah, it is so cool. It's very cool that I got to be a part of this, telling this story with the people whose story it is. You know, getting to tell their story for them was just the most exciting part, I think, for me. It's just a lucky, special thing to get to do.
Yeah. Meeting.
My son loves reptiles, so that's
We are talking about a children's book, so what better than to have children online, you know? It's okay. I would piggyback off of that and say, when we did a virtual talk with the marching mothers during COVID, so we did a Zoom and I interviewed them, but I didn't get to meet them in person. And earlier this week, when it was debuted, the PBS documentary In Town, meeting them in person was like meeting a celebrity. It was like starstruck. I was absolutely starstruck.
yeah.
I was like, these women from Hillsboro, which, like, if you know Hillsboro, rural, not the big city, not Columbus, not Cleveland, not Cincinnati, and to know that it was one of the largest marches or civil rights movements in history, and I got to shake their hands, like, oh my goodness.
Absolutely. And also when we did the reading and the debut at the Highland Historical Society, first to go back to the documentary, I think it's great that they're still showing that documentary up there on the wall. It's really great to just see that little exhibit. I mean, it's a small room, but it's full of history. So I was really impressed to see that. I was glad to see that. But also meeting the people of Hillsborough and seeing how interconnected, like the mothers were sisters and cousins and grandmothers, and just everybody marching was doing it for the love of their family and their community. And so having them point out to me like, oh yeah, this person, because we have this spread of all the mothers in the back of the book, and Ohio Humanities put this, put the entire book on foam board. So we had this spread out. And so someone was pointing out to me how all of the mothers were connected through different ways and how they were connected to them. So that was great. But then also Quaker teacher, Mrs. Hackney, her relatives were there. Her daughter, grandchildren, and great grandchildren were there. So that's another great picture. Like Melvin mentioned the one with Miss Joyce Clemens reading the text. My favorite picture, of course, by far. But then there's also this photo of all of these descendants of one of the Quaker teachers who's in the book. And they, of course, didn't know when they opened up the book to read that their grandmother, great grandmother, mother was going to be, featured in the book. And so they were excited. And we have a picture with them holding the book. So yeah, those connections are really cool. And it's just great to know that the story is meaningful to many people for different, for different reasons, right? There's many ways to connect to it.
Absolutely. So my part two to this question is, you had the highs, but what about the lows? Did you have any lows in creating the book?
I really don't think I had any lows. I would say, I mean, the only thing that I could call a low is the sense of like a little bit of anxiety around getting it done. Initially, I had an earlier due date that I wanted to hit, and we didn't hit that, and that kind of made me feel, nervous, bad. Like I was just like, oh, I'm kind of letting Ohio Humanities down or letting the women down. And it was a couple months later that we were able to actually complete the project. And so, as a creative person, as a publisher, I know, of course, that creative projects don't necessarily unfold on a strict timeline, and that I was doing the best that I could. But at the same time, I was disappointed in that, in that delay, because I was just so eager to get it done. And so that was the only low. I mean, the entire community around this book, working with everyone from Ohio Humanities, everybody there is a wonderful person, was beautiful to work with. It was just like being home. So that part was great. Writing with Debbie and getting to know her better. Debbie and I were friends. We knew each other, but we hadn't spent a ton of time together. And so that was a gift, to be able to have a reason to like, oh, we have to meet up and sit for 2 hours together. And we get to do that. And so that was a treat. I mean, she's a great writer. She's a great person. She's a great storyteller. Even meeting with her in person, like she sometimes talks through stories. And so that was always fun. Meeting the women and working with the women in Hillsboro, the marchers, as well as like Katie, and John from the Historical Society. Everybody in this project is great. So I just kept saying there just wasn't, I couldn't imagine a better working relationship that was integrated into my personal life. It was just a gift. I'm sad it's over, because it was really a beautiful year of just working on a passion project that had such meaning. The other books that I've written, I love my the other stories that I've told. But this story, um, the gift of this story and this process, I would say, was so much different than the other books that I've just written on my own and put together and kind of done really in isolation. This was created in community, and that was just wonderful. So I don't have a low for you.
That's okay. I'm glad to hear there was like no traumatic or bad, things that happened. So that's good. Um, I guess like Carlotta, as like you being a mother and you mentioned that Debbie's a mom too, kind of like what are your hopes and dreams for the children's book? And kind of just like what do you hope for it to do for kids,
Yeah, I am hoping and praying that this book is amplified and shared so widely that folks across the nation and across the world are reading it. And I really mean that. I mean, it's an important Ohio story, but it really is U.S. history. And I feel like, the world needs to read this story. And so I hope that people are compelled to share it with their schools, with their colleagues, people all over the nation, so that everybody is talking about this story. One of the things that someone said when we went to the Highland Historical Society was, of course, people always say this, tell Oprah, share this with Oprah. This needs to be a movie. And a feature, no, she said this needs to be a feature-length film. And yes, because back to what I said about this being such a significant story, why shouldn't this be a feature-length film? Why shouldn't we continue to think of more creative ways, not only to amplify the documentary and step by step how the Lincoln School Marchers blazed the trail to justice, but also we can create other books for different age groups, right? We can create short films and feature-length films to really get this story the hype that it deserves. So yes, I hope and pray that step by step meet schools and young people across the country, right? I hope it sells like crazy. And I hope that it encourages people to learn more. But I also hope we continue to tell this story in new and different ways.
Absolutely. Yes, yeah. And before we had went live, I was kind of talking about for Black History Month, the Clinton County History Center donated up to 20 copies of the book to our local literacy foundation. And they have what is called laundromat libraries in Clinton County. So low income, families that are doing their laundry at a laundromat here in Clinton County, there are bookshelves. There are bookshelves and they're full of free books. And I met with Elizabeth and Karen through the Literacy Foundation, and I said, we have to get this book out there. It's a children's book. It's about diversity. It's got a little bit of Clinton County in it as well. I was like, what is there not to like? And that was our mission for Black History Month, was to get these copies out there. And we are now embarking on phase 2, which we're hoping we can get some concerned citizens in Clinton County to sponsor a book for our local schools to go into the libraries and just give them a book for free and say, put this in the school library. And if a kid wants to check it out, they can read it themselves and learn more about the history behind it. So yeah,
That's awesome. Thank you.
we're excited. We're excited about that opportunity. And we are selling the book in our gift shop. We have hardcovers and soft covers. So I think we are the only location in Clinton County. I know they're selling it through Highland County Historical Society as well. But I'm pretty proud that, we're the first in Clinton County to be doing it.
That's awesome.
So
yes, I hope that everybody listening will, reach out to Ohio Humanities, to me, to Debbie, for school visits, for, bulk school orders, all of those things. Let's really share this story widely as you are doing. Everybody has their space where they can make space for this book.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Melvin, do you maybe like want to piggyback off of that and like talk about how you can bring it to the schools or share whatever that is?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best starting place is definitely to visit the lincolnschoolstory.com and look at the resources that we have. You can also see ways that you can go about purchasing the book there. I think that, we're obviously talking about this book in the midst of Black History Month, but this book is such a powerful story. This is really an every month story, you know, so get your hands on it however you can, and really share it widely, because it's not every day that we find a story in our backyard, you know, a civil rights story that starts before the Montgomery bus boycott and ends afterwards. So this is really an important story that we want to uplift. And if you have any questions about how to, how to get it to your school district, anything like that, you can always reach out to us at Ohio Humanities, and we will do our best to make sure that we get you the resources and everything that you need to get you access to the book. So again, just reach out to us at Ohio Humanities and let us know if you need anything.
Awesome. Well, I told you guys about 45 minutes and it's almost 8, so I think that's all the questions that I really did have. But I thank you both so much. I really wanted to take this opportunity because I think the book's really cool and I just wanted to learn more as well, so I'm sure other people did too. And to continue to share this story, it's so important, and get the information out there. I mean, I can't believe that it's primary sources in a children's book. I love it. Like, it's double thumbs up for
Thank
me.
you, Kathy. Thank you.
So kudos on all of your hard work, because as a historian, I know how hard it is to cite and research and dig, either through physical archives or digital archives. I mean, it's hours on end, and I can't imagine how much time that you and Debbie both dedicated to that.
Yes, and again, Ohio Humanities were fact checkers and read through and made sure that we had everything right. And so yes, that was another thing that was like nerve-wracking, making sure we got spellings right and dates right and all of those subtle things. So yep, you're right. Thank you.
Yeah.
And behind us were the folks in Highland County. So we didn't have all the answers. They helped us.
You're really lucky that you had like a source to call, like there was somebody living that you could ask these questions to, because a lot of times in our research, like you got to go what's based off of, in front of you. No, okay, well, I think that's all that I had. I appreciate you both so much for spending, a couple of minutes out of your day with us. And if anybody that's watching has questions, like Melvin said, please reach out to Ohio Humanities. I am happy at the Clinton County History Center to facilitate any questions that I can answer. You can learn more about the book that's for sale in our gift shop on our social media pages, as well as our website, clintoncountyhistory.org. We do have a like virtual or online gift store, gift shop that you can buy the book directly from the gift shop, and we can either ship it to you, we can reserve it for you, whatever that you may need. I know quite a few of our members are not local to Clinton County, so if you are watching and would like to get a copy, give us a call or visit our website, clintoncountyhistory.org, to learn more. As mentioned, we will be sharing this recording at a later date for anyone that missed it. But we greatly appreciate Melvin and Carlotta for spending your evening with us, and we're very excited to have at least 20 copies out into the Clinton County universe and continuing to sell them, not just in Black History Month, but for the foreseeable future. We're very excited about that. Hopefully we will start in phase 2 of finding some citizens that want to sponsor these books for our schools. And if that is you, please reach out to us and ask to speak to me directly, Shelby, at the Clinton County History Center, so I can also facilitate that request as well. So without further ado, we will end it for tonight, but thank you all for tuning in and listening, and we hope you have a great evening. Happy Black History Month, and thank you both again.
Thank you. Good
Yeah.
night, Melvin. Bye.
Have a
Yep,
great
thank you.
evening.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks.